Welcome back to Following Noadon, a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 50, and we are talking about Warbreaker chapters 21 through 29. Paul and Eliot, congratulations on hitting 50 episodes of our podcast. It feels like not too long ago that we launched this thing, and we're going to come up on a year pretty quick here of doing this podcast. So one a week. We're at 50 right now. So congratulations. Elliot, how you feeling?
Fantastic. 50. Well done, gentlemen. I agree. It seems like not that long ago the three of us just kind of, well, what if we did a podcast? And here we are 50 episodes into it. So, wow.
Yeah, it seems like just yesterday we were talking about Tom Bombadil.
Yes,
Right.
for our practice episode. We never
we
aired
did a
that.
little practice episode. That's true. That's your little, fun fact of the day for our Following Note on podcast. We did a little practice episode to make sure our bells and whistles and microphones worked. So we talked about Tom Bombadil for like 25, 30 minutes or so. So
it was like an hour.
There's that.
It was like an hour. We talked.
It was not an hour. It was pretty short.
Was it?
It was pretty short.
I thought it was pretty long.
It was probably 30 to 35 minutes.
Oh, you know what it is, actually? Nobody cares, but you know what it is I hit the record button and then we were testing mics and stuff. And so like the audio file is like an hour and 20 minutes, but we only talked for like half. Yeah. Okay.
We talked for probably like half an hour.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with you.
And then we were like, man, are we going to be able to talk long enough in our episodes? And boy, has that aged well.
I hope y'all are taking notes out there. That'll be a trivia question for our 100th episode. Sometime
true.
5 years down the line.
True.
Alrighty.
Anyways,
I want y'all's thoughts so far. Instead of 2 words, just 20 seconds, 30 seconds of story so far, specifically chapters 21 through 29 of where we are in the book right now. Paul, we'll start with you.
It always starts with me. I'm kidding. I feel like this week was kind of it was a good week for me reading Warbreaker. I enjoyed a lot of it, and I feel like I'm at a point where I can kind of give some more hot takes.
Okay. Elliot.
We're over halfway done with the book now. We're chugging along pretty good. I gotta say, I was feeling a little less positive actually after these set of episodes. I mean, now that we're halfway through, I felt like we should have had a big moment that really kind of grabbed me and made me want to continue on it and read this book. And honestly, I don't know that we've had it. There's been a lot of character development and a lot of philosophical discussion and religious discussion, which I've enjoyed a lot of that. It's been interesting, but just not super exciting. I don't know that there's a whole lot about this book that's really grabbed my attention and made me want to, gotta know what happens next. I'm still very curious as to know what's going to happen. I'm definitely going to enjoy the second half of this book, and I'm very curious to see where the story's going and where our characters are going and how they're going to develop and the challenges they'll face, but I don't know, not nearly as into this one as the other Stormlight Archive books.
Which is very fair. I will say, I think, okay, so with these books, I feel like my excitement is coming from trying to figure out some comparison to our major storyline in the Stormlight Archive, some form of connection there. And so I've almost been reading this like an interlude, and now that it kind of makes more sense, I feel like I'm trying to make more work. But Yeah, I can agree. Like, it's not the exciting story. I feel like there was no major hook. I think if there was a big hook, it was kind of the very end of where we were last week with like finding out the God King
Yeah.
is mute, or he's almost like a puppet, or that's Siri's logic out there of what he
Yeah.
is. So I feel like that's supposed to be the hook, as far as I can understand. Which, albeit in the like drama political sense, that I feel like that's a pretty good hook. Um, but in the like super entertaining, can't wait to like can't put the book down, like it doesn't really have that effect. So
Yep, I would agree that. Actually, I'm not going to say that. I'm gonna I'm gonna hold that.
you tend to do that.
Yeah, well, it's been a while since I've done one that explicit. Where I was about to say something and I was like, never mind. You were due for one.
He just likes toying with us.
I feel like he does this on purpose. He's like,
Yep.
oh, it'd be cool. And he's like, actually, never mind. Like, he just does that to try and make us think he has something really big.
A little bit.
And we'll just find out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whether or not he does.
All right. Instead of a spell check this week, I would like at this point in the story, who's your favorite character?
I'm going to twist your question a little bit. The most entertaining character, I think, is Lightsong. I get the most enjoyment out of reading his sections, but I think favorite character, perhaps, probably for me, honestly, Vivenna. I think at this point, I talked last episode about how I didn't think her story was all that exciting, and we get a little more kind of action-ish stuff in these sections with her, but even still, I think her storyline is probably the least exciting here. But I do even more after these chapters like her character development. I like the struggles that she's going through, where her faith, her religious faith is being tested, and she's having to really, have to come to grips with how do I reconcile what I believe with the real world and what actually happens out here, and what the tough choices I have to make. And I like that journey that she's on.
Okay.
For me, in her previous stories, I feel like there were way more stark differences between, like, for example, reading The Way of Kings. It was like, okay, give me Kaladin. Don't come at me with the Shalon stuff. Like that's boring. It was pretty stark. These are all about on par. So it's harder for me to pick a favorite because I feel like there's not a storyline that's super intriguing. I feel like I'd say Vasher. Vasher and his sword is like a hybrid. Because we kind of see some funny dialogue with them and like some cool moments. And I feel like he's the closest we are getting to an action sequence. But I would also say like Siri and her story. Siri has gotten much more inquisitive and is kind of trying to work behind the scenes now, which I think is kind of exciting. And I feel like that's the most suspenseful storyline we have. So if I had to really pick one, I would probably say Siri.
Okay. Mine's Lightsong. I really enjoy Lightsong's lighthearted approach to the court of gods. So it just straight up makes fun of everybody, and that's what he does. And then he does get a hook in these sets of chapters where he almost kind of breaks the fourth wall in these chapters and starts asking himself, wait, why do I care? Like he starts talking to his high priest, and his high priest go back and forth with him, and he's saying, well, why do you care suddenly about this servant getting murdered? And he's like, I have no idea, but apparently I do, so I'm going to go pursue this. So I really enjoy, Elliot, like you said, Lightsong's chapters. He's probably not my favorite character, but he's certainly the most enjoyable to read, in my opinion.
I thought I would wait for this, but I think I'm just gonna go ahead and talk about it since we're talking about Lightsong a little bit. So last week, Trevor kind of asked, like, "Oh, do you think Hoyd maybe Lightsong or something like that?" Or kind of alluded to that. And I think Lightsong may be someone that we know, but not Hoyd.
Ooh.
I think so. Okay, this could easily be debunked, so I'm gonna tread lightly, because I need to get a few things straight that I honestly don't remember for sure. So I'm gonna talk through a little bit. So Lightsong, doesn't he talk about with Larimar that Larimar knew Lightsong in a previous life?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are they the ones having a conversation? Okay, I think Lightsong was Shallan. That's my big prediction.
What?
One
What?
for kind of the like not serious natures, like not serious things going on. And Trevor is really, I don't know if he hates me or
You
if he
broke
just, I don't
him.
know. And I feel like there were just lots of like kind of similarities there. And he talks about Larimar talks about knowing him in a previous life, and
All
I
right.
wish I could.
This begs the question: who's Larimar then?
That's a great question that I don't think we can answer yet.
Oh, okay.
Maybe maybe Larimar is pattern.
Pattern.
I don't know what that one. But that's a good question. And I don't think we know yet. So, a few things that kind of made me think about this. One was Lightsong's. I don't know. I feel like Lightsong was just like cracking jokes, and I got very much the same energy as I get from Shallan whenever she's being her like witty self. Not the
Okay.
same level as wit, which maybe we could see. I mean, I could see some similarities there, but I got more of Shallan like being funny, not like trying to insult. I guess well, Shallan kind of tries to insult, but you know that kind of stuff. And then kind of just the like the light energy in general. We know Shallan is a light weaver. That's kind of a slight connection, and then also, so I wish I could pinpoint exactly where it happens. That one was kind of a like grass to straws connection, but
I feel like that was your best connection yet, in my opinion.
okay, cool. And the next was it talks about like a glowing box, doesn't it? And it gave me the same energy.
Does
as
it?
like I very much remember this. Maybe it wasn't with Lightsong, and that's something that could very easily be debunked. But I thought I remember Lightsong and Larimar talking, and there's kind of this mention like, oh, there's some like glowing box. I had the same thoughts as like children's flashbacks and like the glowing, like, oh, what's behind there, you know? So those are my connections, and that's my wild theory.
I don't-
This is way in the future, and this is Shallan reincarnated as Lightsong.
Oh, in the future. Okay. Oh, I guess that would
Yes,
have
like
to.
this is
make sense.
after Shallan
Got it.
in our story has passed away. And there's no Lightsong.
I don't remember anything about a glowing box. I will be honest.
You should look into it, because I could very well be way off, and that could remove that point entirely. But I definitely remember some mention to a glowing box, and I think it was with Lightsong.
Are you thinking of the painting that they're staring at, and Lightsong is kind of like dissecting the different hues and images in the painting, and then talking about it with Larimar?
Or are you talking about the trap door that he finds in the palace? Like he sees like different colored floorboards and figures out there's a trap door underneath it, but doesn't go investigate because all the priests are watching him. Is that what you're thinking of?
These are some great questions.
Or maybe there's a glowing box
I wish
that
I
we
knew
missed.
exactly. I'll have to look into it, because I definitely remember that. I mean, there's, to be fair, in this story, there's lots of glowing things. Seems like everything is
That is
glowing,
true.
exuding light.
I wouldn't put it past you that there was a glowing box somewhere, but I do not remember it.
Okay, I will have to look into it, because I could see it being the painting, and I would have thought the same thing. But I thought I remembered a glowing box, and I instantly thought I remember thinking of like Shallan's flashback chapters. So feel free, everyone watching, to just roast me in the comments for my connection here. But I'm just gonna take this as my big bold prediction. You know, if it's right, then I'll go down in history. If not, then haha, that was funny.
All right, Paul, I just want to make it clear that these books are related. They're not, I don't know if they're that much related, but they are related. But if you're right, then, you know, that is fully support you.
Then, like I said, if I'm right, then I will go down in history.
I think it's brilliant. Absolutely crazy, but brilliant.
Okay.
Like, who's to say Lightsong is not Shallan?
Cling to that.
Alrighty. Let's talk about Vasher a little bit. We didn't get much Vasher last episode, but this episode, chapter 21, it kind of just opens with Vasher breaking into a palace, and he's throwing Nightblood around his sword, and he specifically doesn't kill anybody, which comes into play later when Lightsong's doing his investigating, but he specifically doesn't kill anybody. We don't know why he's there at the time. And then he gets foiled and he leaves. But and then he also comes in at the end of chapter 29, which we'll probably close the episode with because we get some interesting foreshadowing there. But this whole side story of Lightsong investigating Vasher's break-in might be one of my favorite parts of Warbreaker, because Lightsong gets all excited for no reason, and he's trying to figure out why he's so excited about investigating this. Lightsong asks Siri, like, did you know any sheriffs back in your town? And Siri's like, no, yes, sort of. I don't know. Like, what do you mean? And Lightsong's like, well, what do they do? How do they figure it out? And Siri's just, what are you talking about, dude? You know, but I really enjoy Lightsong chapters. So what were you guys' thoughts on Vasher breaking in here? Any thoughts on what he's looking for in Mercy Star's palace?
So I don't know what he's looking for, but simply just the, like, I don't know, his character and kind of breaking in, like, try not to kill anyone, and you just said it and I already forgot the name of the sword. Is it
Nightblood.
Nightblood. Okay. Nightblood, he kind of talks to him, right? And it's like, oh, come on, let me kill him. Like,
you could have used me instead of that tassel.
Exactly. He's so disappointed. I don't remember, honestly, if you confirmed it or if it's confirmed, but I'm going with the assumption that this is the sword we see with Zeth at the end of Words of Radiance. I'm kind of just going to go and make that jump. And it kind of just got me thinking. I don't have any super major thoughts on that in our Stormlight Archive story right now, but just kind of thinking, like, I don't know, how will this sword or spren, like, affect our characters? I don't know. I feel like he's going to be a bad influence. Like, if there's, like, the angel and demon on your shoulder, like, telling you, like, options, like, I feel like he's just the demon, like, like, go ahead, kill him. Like,
that's what I'm made for. Let me kill him.
Do it. You know. So yeah, that was something I was thinking about. I feel like Vasher's like, okay, quiet down, like, let me do my thing. So yeah, no super major thoughts about, I don't know, what he's looking for or anything. I honestly didn't think that much about it.
I too am trying to figure out the sword almost more than Vasher. I could have sworn, I was trying to look it up real fast here, but I'm not seeing it, that in one of these chapters the sword talks something about, like, I was created to created to destroy evil.
I was going to bring this
something
up
like that.
if you didn't, Elliot.
And that line right there is making me throw my hat in with you, Paul, in that I think this is the same sword that we saw at the end of Words of Radiance, because the sword says something sort of similar at
So-
the end of Words of Radiance.
So at the end of chapter
yelling today,
at the end of chapter 29, it's the quote you're looking for is Nightblood tells Vasher, "I was created to destroy evil," is the quote. And then the line we get at the very end of the second to last chapter, I believe, in Words of Radiance, is Zeth hearing in his head, "Hello, would you like to destroy some evil today?" Is the line. So I'm really glad you caught that. I was going to bring that up if you didn't, Elliot.
Yeah, and those two seem pretty aligned. It sounds like the same voice, if you will, and so it makes me think it's the same sword. But it's got me wondering, if this sword is created to destroy evil, maybe it is a force for good, or maybe it was intended to be a force for good, and is this great and powerful thing that can bring down even the greatest of evil. But so far, all we've seen it do is just want to kill every person it's come across.
It's true.
And it's so I don't know if I can trust this sword. I'm not sure. This guy seems out for blood, which, I mean, he's a sword. I guess that's his job, I suppose. So maybe he still is a good character, if you will. I'm using my air quotes for those of you who aren't watching our video. But I'm not sure quite how to treat this sword yet. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Not sure. Really not sure. Same for Vasher, actually. Good guy, bad guy. Still not sure.
Here's a theory for you. Maybe it's commentary that yes, the sword is created to destroy evil, and then the sword just wants to kill everybody that it finds. Maybe there's evil in everybody, and it gets confused. Maybe it's a commentary on the human condition. Maybe we're reading too much into it. Okay, Paul, your turn.
now I have no thoughts. Okay, one thing that we talked about previously in our last episode was kind of like who's our good guys, who's our bad guys. We kind of can't tell. We can kind of make guesses, but there's no like proof. And I would say it's still about the same now. I feel like Lightsong is kind of starting to look like a good character, whereas I didn't think so before. And I've always thought of Vasher as a good character, but this sword is kind of like a wild card. I feel like he's reeled in by Vasher, but like I don't know, in the wrong hands, maybe they would just kill everything, you know.
Zeth, sorry.
True. Hopefully our little Skybreaker will be like, no, Zeth, like reel him in when he tries to talk to you. So yeah, I still don't know what to make it with them. Also, just the whole like, oh, this was one thing I thought of earlier, and I wanted to bring up. So Nightblood is a shard, but I'm assuming this is like a spren,
Okay.
honor blade, maybe, or something. But like this is like an anomaly to the people there, right? Like people don't have shard blades like they do on Roshar, right? Like people like, what's with that sword? He moves it around, and light kind of like it talks about it makes things around it like darker and stuff. It almost kind of bends, warps light, things like that. Like it emits darkness almost. It's not just a dark blade. Which is kind of weird to me, and also raises some questions like, is this a spren? Are there spren here and they just don't like see them? Or is Vasher from Roshar? Like there's just a lot of questions around this blade here that doesn't make sense. It's like our only legitimate connection right now, I'd say, to Roshar, or like things we know about the cosmere as a whole. But as far as we know, there's not like Spren, and in place of like Spren and Stormlight, there's like breaths and light. I guess roughly. Um, so I don't get is the place of this. I don't get it.
While we're on the topic of crazy, ridiculous predictions and characters bridging across our two worlds and our two stories, the one that actually stood out to me the most as a possibility was I could totally see Vasher being a younger Zyle. Actually, I could see Zyle as kind of the grizzled old war veteran who is super experienced. He's been through a lot, but is kind of old and cranky now. Whereas Vasher is kind of him in his prime. This is prime Zyle, where he's out there doing the big and earth shaking deeds, and then maybe he's doing maybe some of those things that he either regrets or looks back on when we see him later on. So that would put this story as like in the past relative to the Words of Radiance we just came out of. Perhaps I don't really have any more evidence to like make that a real theory yet, but
I
the
do.
characters might align. Oh boy.
So
I
2
was
weeks
gonna say I didn't hear that.
2 weeks ago, I don't remember if you remember me reading Zyle's interlude, but Zyle has an offhand comment about hearing a voice in his head, and he's expecting to hear a voice in his head, and he hasn't heard it for years.
I know my guess at the time, I think I talked about this in the last episode, was I thought that could perhaps be a reference to a Spren, that he might have been a Surge Binder previously and was used to having those conversations with a Spren, like we saw Kaladin and Syl always have, and Pattern and but yeah, Nightblood is certainly another possibility there.
I have one, I guess, pretty big point against your theory, which makes a lot of sense. But if that is the case, if Zyle was Vasher, then that means Shalom isn't Lightsong, and so I feel
Oh,
like
you're right.
I feel like your theory is a little bit lacking there because those timelines wouldn't really add up. So yeah, that was a good guess though. I like your
Clearly
like your
disproven.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Debunked. Next.
Yeah.
So yeah, chalk that one up on the blackboard of what ifs.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about Siri and the God King for this episode. So, Susebron
Susebron
is mute and doesn't know how to read, and begins to have like genuine conversation via writing on a tablet or a whiteboard or something with Siri. And they have like good conversation, and Siri quickly realizes that he knows everything about the language. He just needs to be taught letters, and he can fill the rest of the gaps himself. He knows how to talk. He knows how to write, I guess, but his handwriting's terrible. But he needs to be taught letters, and then he can communicate really well. And so she does that, and immediately they just start having conversations. A little bit later, she tries to get books from the priests, and they are beginning to be a little suspicious of her. But what are you guys' thoughts on this twist from the end of last episode into this episode?
One thing, just as a little fun fact, whenever she's teaching him, doesn't she write a letter? It's like, this is Shash.
Yes, I'm glad you said this.
Like, oh, like our Shash that's on Kaladin's forehead. Like, that's a pretty cool little connection. It made me think a little bit. I'm not going to go too deep into it because I don't think it's that significant. I think it was just kind of a like, oop, here you go, like here's a Shash glyph or whatever. On Roshar, the Shash brand is like dangerous, right? It's like
Right.
Like, careful, this man is dangerous. And here it's like not presented in a bad light at all, isn't it? It's just like this is a
For here, it's the
Sure.
letter S. It's
Okay,
the
okay, I
letter
see.
S.
Gotcha. Okay, that's what I thought. So like, do we know on Roshar? Is it like specifically if it's branded on someone, is it deemed as dangerous, or is it just a normal letter to like, letter S on Roshar as well? If you were like riding, or do we know that, or
Uh,
that may be an unimportant question.
no, that's a fine question. It's a little confusing because there's two different writing styles on Roshar. There's the women's script, which is a classic language like we would be familiar with in writing, and then there's glyphs, which is more like hieroglyphics in like ancient Egypt, where it's more of a picture and it's you can read it, but it's not really like a written language. So the Shash glyph on Roshar is more of a picture, like it's more of a stamp, if you will. Um, and it just means dangerous. But the what's being referred to here is a letter in a book, like a letter in an alphabet. So
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I was just kind of curious. It's not a major significance or whatever, but as far as like their conversation, I was super curious to hear from the God King. So my understanding of the God King as of right now is he's like this puppet that the priests are kind of using to be presented as the God King. But there's not really a God King, and maybe there's just being a lot of strings being pulled behind the scenes. And I'm assuming that the God King is just some kid they pulled off the streets years ago, and they were like, okay, like just talking out so he can't use this, and we're gonna imbue him with these breaths, and he's gonna be our guy. But he's like got a child's intelligence almost, like he knows things, but like wasn't educated, like can't read, can barely write, like that's my understanding as a first time reader, I guess, of our God King right now. And so he's simply curious, like, hello, like Miss Girl, like, can you like read me a story? Like, um so I could be a little off on that, but that's like my basic understanding of him, which gets me really intrigued. Like, what does he know? What can we learn from him? Yeah, basically that. Like, what can we learn from him?
I was really
before you jump in, Elliot, I just wanted to say one thing real quick, then I'll hand it to you. He does have like tens of thousands of breaths, maybe not that many. He does have thousands of breaths. What is the name or title, I guess, that they call Siri?
vessel.
The vessel, yeah.
Keep that in mind. All right, Elliot, go.
Sorry, you got me thinking about much stuff now.
Yep, you're welcome.
So God King, Susebron. How do they say it?
Sesebron.
Sesebron.
Susebron, the God King. Interesting character, interesting twist for sure. I too, like you, Paul, I was a little bit confused trying to understand all this. So the guy's he's 50 years old, right? They've talked about how he's ruled for at least 50 years, so he's at least 50. He looks like or seems to have aged only to like age 20 ish, but then he has like the experience of a child. He has this like innocence of, you know, a maybe not a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, somewhere in there. So it's this very strange mix of character and age and like what's going on here and just his he's super smart, so he picks up and he learns stuff really fast, and he's not, unintelligent by any means. It's like he's been so sheltered his entire life, like so incredibly sheltered from everything in all manners and in languages and culture. He doesn't even know like what the culture of his people are like because he's never been around them. He doesn't know about marriage and all of that. He has that kind of hilarious conversation with her about oh, we spent the night in the same room. Why hasn't a child arrived? Looking around, it's like,
Right.
that's not how that works. That kind of stuff is like, who is this guy? Interesting, yeah, interesting little twist here.
He doesn't even know that other religions exist. He doesn't really know what the word religion means. Like, why wouldn't everybody believe in me? Because I've been told I'm the God King my entire life. Why hasn't everybody else been told that too? Like he doesn't really understand the concept of different cultures, different religions, and so as Siri's trying to explain it to him, he's like, he understands the new concept pretty well, but he just has no clue before that.
And clearly, from the chapters we get here, his priests are controlling him, controlling the whole situation. It seems like, they're making sure that Siri can't get to the information in the history books that she's trying to look up. She has to go to Lightsong later to get, a little bit of that there. If the God King doesn't even know like the workings of how his culture is even built up, how his religion even works, clearly it's the priests that are building that, continuing that, enforcing all of that. I think all we're still missing though is kind of a motive, kind of the why. Like, why have they done this, and why are we now in the crisis that we're at of they need an heir? Why now? Like, why is this an issue, and what are the motives? What are the motives behind all this? We're starting to kind of see maybe who some of the players are, and maybe start to draw a little bit more of who's on what side of the lines, but still don't really know the whys.
And Siri specifically kind of concludes a male heir, because two God Kings removed, the vessel had a daughter and then a son, and then mysteriously the God King gave up his breaths. And then the one, I guess this God King's dad had him, and then mysteriously gave up his breaths very quickly after that, like weeks after. And he's been the God King for 50 years or whatever they say. So yeah, you're right. The motive's not there, but
speaking of kind of drawing the lines and figuring out who the good guys and the bad guys are, I actually want to bridge back to the Lightsong kind of plot line for a little bit. And bring in a bit of the Vasher as well. So Vasher has kind of uncovered that the priests are up to something. They have secret compartments in the palaces they're not supposed to. And then Lightsong puts on his detective cap and goes and figures that out, like we said. And he concludes that, oh, hold on a second, the priests are doing something they're not supposed to. We know Siri's getting manipulated by priests. Where does Lightsong's high priest guy, Larimar, where does he fall in all of this? Because he seems like, at first, he seems like a really good guy. He seems like he's really honestly there to help Lightsong. He seems like a close friend of Lightsong. He's one of my favorite characters, honestly, so far, that guy. But we're kind of getting hints that maybe all the priests are in cahoots and not for the better. Is this guy in that same boat? Is he part of the villains, if you will, of the story? I'm really hoping not, but he might be.
Yeah, I definitely say that, Larimar, I feel like he's one of our safest characters to guess. Like, he's a good character, but also, like, for that reason, you could say, like, oh, he might be a bad character. So we'll just kind of have to see how that plays out, honestly. I don't think I can make a jump there.
Yeah.
That's too big of a jump for me to make. Not something plausible like Shalana's Lightsong.
Well, while we're kind of on this topic, Lightsong and Larimar have an interesting conversation about the painting. We talked about the painting a little bit ago, and Lightsong sees as he's looking at this painting, he realizes that you have to be of the third heightening to really appreciate this painting, because the vast majority of this painting is red, but it's a lot of different shades of red. And if you can see the third heightening, then you can split it and then appreciate it for what it is. And it's a war scene. And then, fun fact, there's a black sword in the middle of the war scene, but that's more just headcanon theory at this point. But Larimar doesn't see, or at least claims he doesn't see, the painting. Like, he just sees red on red, and he doesn't have the heightening of the third heightening to see it, to appreciate this painting. So I don't remember what they named what the title of the painting's called, but Lightsong really does appreciate it, and he realizes as Larimar tells him the title of the painting that he already knew the title. Like, he's like, wait, I've seen this before. I know what this is. And he's had a couple of those. It's just Larimar's at least pretending or claiming that he doesn't see this painting, and Lightsong does, but Lightsong's clearly seen this painting before. At least he thinks he does. What are you guys' thoughts on this third heightening painting appreciation thing? Eliot, you mentioned it a little bit ago, but
Yeah, I did mention it before. I don't know that I have too much more than that to say. I mean, it was a good moment to kind of refresh on the magic system there with the breaths and whatnot that's going on, that he can see the differences there. Yeah, the fact that he recognizes or knows what's going on in the story seems like another just bit of evidence that maybe like part of his previous life is like slowly coming back to him. The whole bit too with the whole detective, part that he just seems to naturally fit into that role. He seems to instinctively know, hey, I'm going to split up my witnesses and interview them individually so that they can't, corroborate on their story. That those kinds of things. It seems like things are maybe kind of coming back to him that maybe aren't supposed to come back to him. I mean, don't really know quite yet how the whole returned thing works, but it seemed like more of that going on with the painting.
and because he splits his witnesses up when he's investigating Vasher's intrusion, he figures out that Vasher is rich and his motive is not to steal the paintings like the priests are claiming. B, because he can waste a breath on a squirrel. B, that there were actually two intruders because Vasher's motive was not to kill anyone and somebody died anyway. So, and he wouldn't have figured that out unless he had split the priest from the other witnesses, and the priest described somebody different than who everybody else was describing. So, he is smart. He doesn't really know how he's smart at the moment, but Lightsong is like can figure this stuff out.
Yep. Yeah, it seems like things are just coming instinctively to him. And interestingly enough, that whole second intruder thing actually caught me by surprise when they were describing the scene and they were talking about how one of the servants was left dead. I was all confused because I was like, I just read that chapter and he definitely didn't kill him. I was very confused. And so when Lightsong finally got to the conclusion of, oh, there's a second one, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I didn't realize that. So I was kind of discovering some of it as Lightsong was as well in that chapter.
The guy is killed with a dueling sword, and Vasher's described as only having nightblood. So, and one of the servants is like, no, nightblood was huge. I couldn't even wield it when I tried to pick it up. It's like a massive sword, and it's not one of those dueling rapier things that everybody seems to be carrying around.
So who did it? Who's the second intruder? Do we know? We don't know.
You don't know.
I think it's just mystery intruder number 2. I guess we'll have to wait and find out on that one.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I have enough to even guess on that one. I could throw
Yeah.
out some wild guesses, but I mean, I really have no idea who would even want to do that. My first thought is to maybe think of like the priests trying to cover something up, but that doesn't even make any sense. I
It
have no
could
idea.
be. I feel like the only guesses I could make are um yeah, either priests trying to cover something up or like Larimar somehow, like, maybe if he's a hidden evil character, um, trying to sneak around and do stuff behind the scenes. Yeah, it would have to be one of our kind of like vague characters. Maybe Larimar, maybe somehow like his name Blue Fingers, um, something like that. I'm kind of in the boat that it's someone we don't really know. It very well could be someone we don't know. Or it could be kind of one of our minor characters. Maybe one of the mercenaries is secretly evil, but
My
nothing seems to stand
On
out.
my first read, I thought it was Denth. I thought Denth snuck in after Vasher to try to kill Vasher because we know that there's a rivalry there, and then he gets spotted by one of the servants that Vasher left behind, has to kill him and then leave. But that was my thought, because we've seen Denth, or actually earlier in this episode, wield his sword to like alarming speed and
Yep.
accuracy.
Yep.
Which we haven't really talked about Vivenna yet, but Vivenna has been running around with her mercenaries and disrupting the war effort for Hallandren, and Denth has showed on several occasions that he knows exactly how to use his dueling sword. So that was my thought on my first read.
Good guess, Trevor, but I'm sure you'll come to find out you were
But
incorrect.
Lightsong is Shalon, so that can't happen, right? Like,
Clearly.
Yes,
Yeah.
obviously. I mean, come on. Use some logic here, Trevor.
yeah,
Come
sorry.
on. Goodness.
Do you guys have any theories or more thoughts on the rivalry between Vasher and like the mercenary and thieves of the city? Like, Vasher kind of is presented to you as like the vigilante, and then Vivenna has allied herself with the mercenaries. So, and at actually the end of this chapter, Vasher's just standing on top of a building, doesn't care who sees him, and Nightblood and Vasher talking back and forth like, oh, there's Vera Trelides, which is Denth, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm probably gonna have to kill them eventually, and isn't super set on it, but what are you guys' thoughts on Vivenna's allied with the mercenaries and then Vasher being the vigilante guy going around killing thieves?
I could kind of see the story trope of Vasher's kind of like our protagonist, and we don't fully we kind of understand him. And then there's Dent, who's like kind of the good guy throughout the story, and then turns out I don't know, he's some crazy, like, I don't know, either envious or has some beef with Vasher, and that's kind of his secret motive is to try and kill him, and that would also explain the like second intrusion or whatever, second person, because that would line up kind of with the guess of, okay, it's Dent and he's trying to kill Vasher, and yeah, like a guard spotted him, so he had to kill him. It didn't work out. I could see Dent as kind of like a secret, like having this plan to get back at Vasher over something we don't really know about yet. And being a villain, but I don't know. I can't make any crazy jumps.
I think Denth is number one on the top of my list of I can't decide whether he's good guy or bad guy. He could go any number of ways, I think, as far as like you're talking about, Paul, maybe Vasher is the hero, if you will, and Denth is actually the one who betrayed him back in the day, or who knows what, and they clearly have a history there and are not getting along. I think they talk about Vasher having killed one of their companions at some point along
Yep.
the line.
That's right at the end
And
of chapter
so
29.
yeah, so they clearly there's clearly some history there. They used to know each other, or used to be friends perhaps, or companions, and now are estranged. Yeah, not sure who to place on what side. I have no idea who I'm rooting for, but they seem to be on opposite sides where perhaps they were in the past on the same side.
We mentioned it a little bit, but Vivenna's character development so far of Princess of Idris, very aloof. She's brought down to dense level of mercenary, just need to do what you can to get by, even if you're aiming for the right cause, you can sacrifice here and there to get there. And then she also assumes that Jewel had her breath taken from her, and she's like living in agony ever since. But Jewel turns on her and says, "No, I was proud to give my breath to the God King back when I was 11, because I got paid for it, and my family lived for another year. So how dare you judge me for giving up my breath when I saved my family? Wouldn't you do the same?" So Vivenna is getting a very interesting lesson in her, like, the world that she's surrounded in, less her proper lessons of taking other people's breaths is bad, like that type of thing.
I actually really enjoyed that chapter, that segment where Vivenna is struggling with what is actually a really difficult question if you think about it. It's kind of the difference between faith and empathy, and trying to reconcile the two between them, because Vivenna believes that she needs to empathize with Jewel and try and see things from her perspective and keep an open mind, and learn about how Jewel sees the world. But at the same time, she's trying to hold true to the religious faith that she has and everything she was brought up on, and kind of realizing that, can she do both? Can she hold to what she was taught to believe and at the same time open her mind to see it from Jewel's perspective? Or does she need to kind of not open her mind to that and see if that, and hold to what she's been taught? It's an interesting dilemma. And I think she talks about kind of the arrogance of it. Is it arrogant of her to hold to her faith, as opposed to, genuinely consider Jewel's perspective on things? It's an interesting theological dilemma to think about it. It got me thinking. I I did want to say, kind of unrelated to what we've been talking about, but something I wanted to bring into this episode because it kind of occurred to me throughout some of these chapters. I think it's the Vivenna chapters where she references a couple times the fact that because she now has all these breaths, she has a kind of a greater awareness of the other people that are around her if they have breaths, right? So there's the whole part with Jewel of she can't like sense Jewel because she doesn't have a breath. And I thought it was actually really clever, some clever writing from Mr. Sanderson, of how he kind of describes how, even a person with one breath, which, we could kind of assume is you and me, right? Can
Right.
can sometimes, you can sometimes feel when someone's watching you. You know how you can like be sitting in the airport or at a bus stop, or wherever, and you just feel like you're being watched, and you look around and sure enough, someone's like awkwardly staring at you. You just somehow have this sixth sense there.
Right.
That was a cool way of Sanderson to explain that little phenomenon with the little magic system that he's got going in this world, and kind of show that, oh, Vivenna has that. She just has it, heightened, times 300, because she has, 300 breaths or whatever she has. So she can know instantly if someone is, watching her, or kind of feels where they're at. So that was kind of cool way to relate it to a kind of interesting phenomenon in our world.
Yeah. I definitely picked that up. I didn't pick that up on my first read, actually, but I definitely heard that I don't know, 3 days ago when I listened to this chapter was, oh yeah, Brandon Sanderson's trying to say that we all have one breath and we can feel when
Right.
somebody's spying on us, that the hair stands up on the back of your neck type of thing. So anything else from this set of chapters?
I think the last thing I would mention is kind of what this chapter or section closed with in chapter 29 of we kind of see Siri and Susebron getting past their initial barrier. They seem to having a little bit of a connection and perhaps even falling in love or something like that. Interesting, and yet another turn to our story. We'll have to see what happens. I'm sure we'll find out pretty quick where that's going to be headed. I think.
He puts his arm around her, like as we
Mm-hmm.
close that chapter. Yeah.
True. I feel like I'm about all spent on thoughts. I think we covered about everything as well as I know it. I'm looking forward to reading forward. Although, like me and Elliot have said, I don't compare this, I guess, on the same as our Stormlight Archive books, but I have still been enjoying it, you know. So I'm excited to read forward, and it's kind of a nice little change of pace to read something quicker. Like we're gonna have like what 2 more episodes until we're at the end, like
Probably 3,
2 from
but
now,
yeah.
roughly 2 or 3. Yeah. Either way, you know, it's like a fifth of our others. Like,
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's kind of nice. I'm excited because I feel like the further we've gotten into it, the more we can kind of make comparisons and guesses and stuff. So I'm expecting that trend to continue. And my only other thing is, if you are watching and have any sort of evidence to back up Shalon as Lightsong, please comment and let me know. Well, I'm gonna look into the box and stuff like that. It's a very lighthearted comparison, but now I'm a little curious. You know, I'm gonna look into it and just see who we can compare him to. So, if you have any evidence for or against, please mention me in the comments, and I'll make sure to look through. So,
Elliot, any closing thoughts?
Not too much more to add. I too am looking forward to reading more and finishing up this book. I think I'm more excited to get back to Oathbringer, but at the same time still very much want to finish this book and see what the second half is going to have in store for us. So I'm excited to read on.
This is just our big interlude, you know.
That's a good way to. That's actually a great way to think about this. Is just one big, massive interlude that totally works.
True.
All right, let's continue reading. Thanks for joining me, Paul and Eliot, and we will reconvene next week.
Laters.
Farewell.